Today we're going to talk about a modern OCIO. The interesting thing about the federal sector is that there are many agencies that are here in town, all of which have chief information officers, all of which have offices around those chief information officers. And the Cleaner-Cohen Act is what stood up the CIO function and has told us what some of the functions are that need to happen within the CIO function. Well, here we are quite a number of years later after the Cleaner-Cohen Act, and we have CIO organizations that are only kind of fractionally involved with the total package of information resource management. And there's a whole self-discovery that's going on right now around town, around the federal sector, trying to figure out how to better position the OCIOs in order to deliver the information services and the solutions that are needed for the missions to do their jobs. This is all part of a continuing kind of evolution of the use of information technology in the federal sector. Back when there were no CIOs and there were just mission folks with computers, and then there were the computer science types of people that were around, and then an OCIO being formed and a CIO position being established. And we're continuing to try to cycle through to try to figure out what's the best way to organize and deliver these types of services. Well, today we've got a whole host of challenges that continue to exist. And we ask ourselves, well, why do these things continue to exist? There are several challenges that are very common around town. And each of these, because the CIOs themselves are so uniformly created across the different types of agencies and similar types of personnel and similar types of structures, the challenges are very pervasive. So here's just a couple of the challenges that I think we're facing today across the OCIO landscape. What we're seeing is that mission IT users are really using shadow IT organizations to meet their needs. This is being done for a variety of different reasons. But in effect, if you've got a mission that's out in a remote part of the country, or even just in a major metropolitan area somewhere else, or even in DC, frankly, if that mission organization doesn't understand how to buy the services that they need from their OCIO, they're going to find ways to get the IT that they need from other paths. Increasingly, the commodity IT service providers that are out there are selling cloud services, they're selling computing power, they're selling web hosting types of capabilities, or selling solution services. And increasingly, those commodity providers are accessing the mission personnel that have the needs directly, and they're really selling to those mission customers directly. And they're more than happy to do that sale directly to the mission customers. The OCIOs are in a position of needing to realize that those mission customers have to be fought for. Those are a mission customer that should be buying services from the OCIO, or is weighing whether they should buy those services from the OCIO or should be buying those services from an external provider. In effect, the OCIOs are no longer in a position of being monopolies around some of these types of solutions. They've got to come to market with a suite of services that are value add, cost effective, and are delivered with a moderate amount of risk and a good amount of security, and to do so in such a way that it's advantageous for the missions to buy from the OCIO versus an external vendor. Many missions are really not maximizing the use of IT. There are many missions that the federal government provides, services that are being provided out to the citizens where the use of IT is really abysmal. There are vast amounts of paper processes, manual processes that are being automated by using Excel spreadsheets or Word documents, all kinds of kind of ad hoc things that have been packaged together in order to get the job done. The missions are going to get the job done however they can get the job done. There are massive opportunities for efficiencies by leveraging IT in smart ways. What we're really seeing, and we've, I think, already talked about, is that the mission customers, in many cases, are just not engaging their OCIOs. They either don't know how to do it, or they feel like it's going to be bureaucratic, or no one really speaks their language, or they look at all the different people in the OCIO and they're just not sure which one they're supposed to talk to. And I think that gets down to a root issue of whether or not these OCIOs are organized and structured to have customers, sell those customers services, provide the service, receive money for that service, and give that customer a receipt. And that's a vastly different type of structure and intent than what we're used to seeing from the OCIOs. And that gets down to the last bullet. There's really no single point of contact within many of these organizations for these mission customers. Who does that person talk to? It's like walking into a McDonald's and not having someone at the cash register and having to shout out to the back for the food that you want to get. Who do you place your order with? Who is that customer relationship person who's at the front interacting with you in a positive way, understanding your needs, and making sure those needs are met? I think that's the real question that OCIOs are facing today in the federal sector. What's interesting is that federal OCIOs seem very complicated. There's lots of things going on. There's legislation that's enacted, many pieces of legislation that are directed towards the use of information technology. But when you really, really get down to it, OCIOs in the federal sector really only deliver 3 core services. They're delivering IT infrastructure, solutions, and information delivery itself. Now, for IT infrastructure, this is fairly obvious, and most cabinet or department OCIOs are delivering these types of services. And you have things like computers and help desks and data centers and web hosting, and there's a lot of movement towards centralizing these types of commodity functions. And I think there's a lot of improvements that are being made in those areas. Solution delivery is about delivering the applications, the web capabilities, the development, the testing, and the operations of those capabilities for the solutions that need to be brought to bear for the missions themselves. It could be a financial system for a back office type of mission, or it could be a volcano tracking system for a natural resource type of function. Information delivery is something that really isn't happening as much as it could be. This is where we start getting into the data and the information itself. How that information is actually shared between different types of applications, how it's being packaged for analytic purposes and for reporting purposes. There's a lot of data that sits at places like HUD and federal student aid and some of our clients that are around town. And how that information gets packaged and analyzed and used and turned into information, how it's disseminated to the public and made available to the public, is all part of an information delivery set of responsibilities that do sit within the information resource management sphere. So OCIOs themselves, you'll see, generally have a large amount of focus on the IT infrastructure side, not as much on the solution side, and the information delivery side is really an area for improvement. But these are the 3 services that the mission customers want. They need infrastructure, they need solutions, and they need information. The real question is how should these OCIOs be structured in order to deliver these services in the most efficient and effective manner? And that's where many, many CIOs around town are trying to figure out this problem just today. A few weeks ago, there was a small roundtable of CIOs that got together, cabinet CIOs. The federal CIO was there, his deputy was there, the federal chief architect was there, and there were 5 or 6 cabinet CIOs that were represented in the room. The topic of that roundtable was this question: how do we structure ourselves to truly and effectively engage our mission customers to bring them these 3 services that they need? Looking outside of the federal arena sometimes brings us solutions that are interesting and that can be used and packaged back into the federal arena. In this example, we're really looking outside the federal arena. We're also looking outside of IT. One industry that's really shifted is this auto industry. This industry has gone drastically into a customer-centered type of focus when it comes to auto repairs. It wasn't that long ago that when you took your car in for an auto repair, you talked to the technician, you talked to the mechanic, the person who was turning the wrench, so to speak. These are skilled technical professionals who work on the cars and fix those cars, but they're not typically embracing a set of skills that are geared towards customer relationship and customer engagement. Now when you bring your car into many automobile organizations, you go in, you engage with the head of the red team, and this is someone who's trained to interact with customers, who understands the cars but understands the customer's needs and can bridge that gap. This does two things. You've got the customer themselves who's interacting with someone who can relate to them on some level and is trained in order to understand their needs. You also have your skilled professionals, your engine mechanics, your computer diagnostic people, your transmission people. You've got those types of people who can stay on the jobs that they're skilled for and stay on the jobs that they're trained for. So instead of having an engine mechanic having to stop the trade that person is skilled in order to deal with customers, you've got this customer relationship type of function who's there. So the customer benefits, the technical people who are fixing the cars benefit, and there's a end-to-end experience. You know when you bring in your car who you're supposed to talk to, they understand your needs, they package those needs, make sure that those needs are being met. At the end, you've received your service, you receive a bill, you pay that bill, you get a receipt, and you go along understanding that your car has been serviced in the right way. So how does this actually translate into our world? When we look at the modern approach to IT delivery, this is also should be a very customer-centered type of model. On this slide, you see different types of functions that exist, many of which are represented in the Clearing-Cohen Act itself. We've got enterprise architects, and we've got capital planning services, and we've got acquisition and information assurance and application and infrastructure services, and usually there's some tie out to performance measurement. Many of these types of functions are sitting directly relating to the CIO, him or herself. So you've got a senior staff that's made up of enterprise architects and capital planners and application and information assurance people and those types of things. All of these services have to work together in an integrated way in order to deliver the needs to the customer out in the mission organization. The CIO is oftentimes in the federal sector put in a position of having to be the bridge between these organizations because their senior staff is really at a technical level and not at a management level, just like the customer relationship example that we just talked about. You have your customer relationship coordinators in this particular view, and they're the ones who are engaging with those mission customers in a customer-centered type of way. They're understanding the needs of that customer, they're the advocate for that customer. They translate the needs of the customer into requirements that are prioritized, and then those requirements are worked in an integrated way by the back office technical capabilities, these enterprise architects and capital planners and the people that are involved with these types of organizations. The introduction of this customer relationship person in this concept slide really kind of puts the focus of IT delivery on being customer-centered. But how this actually gets organized is actually the next question. How do I organize an OCIO in the federal sector so that I have customer relationship people, and then I have this suite of services that are represented on the remainder of this slide that are working and actually function in an integrated way? What we're really seeing is we're seeing, kind of in summary here, this shift from a historical model to a modern model. You see this historical model, very Clearing-Cohen specific, EA people, CPIC people, information assurance people. These are the functions that are called out in Clearing-Cohen. These are the senior staff that you typically see around the table. The mission owners don't have a direct person to go to. They go to any number of these types of people. There's not a funnel by which the mission owners bring the requirements to the table, and those get prioritized and to be worked by the OCIO's engine, so to speak. There's not a single point where the promises of the OCIO are made to the mission owners. There's just a lot of many-to-many relationships that are happening. In the modern model, we see that customer focus, we see the integrated planning, and we see the delivery happening on the back end of this model behind the customer relationship function. So let's look at a case study. The Department of Housing and Urban Development is an organization that we've been involved with, and HUD has been going through a reorganization, and what they've done is they've taken that auto example and they've taken the concept models that we've talked about and they've put that into a physical organization chart, and they're reorganizing themselves around that organization chart. HUD's really shifted into a modern customer-focused type of posture. There's been a lot of emphasis in the last few years on service catalogs. What are the services that an OCIO offers? For a service catalog to come to life, you need to have a customer relationship function that represents those services, markets and sells those services, and understands whether or not they're services that are being valued and whether they're being executed properly by the rest of the OCIO. You can see that HUD has a CIO and a deputy CIO. Reporting to the CIO and deputy CIO is a customer relationship and performance management office. This is the organization that's responsible for that customer relationship and also responsible for understanding and reporting the performance of the OCIO itself. How well the planning is done, how well the delivery is done, how secure are the solutions and services, and how happy are the customers. That entire collection of performance management is happening in that customer relationship and performance management office. Next, you've got a service planning and management office. Reporting directly into the CIO and deputy CIO, the service planning and management office is the function that plans what it is the customer relationship office formulates in terms of requirements. Essentially, the CIO and the deputy CIO can look to the customer relationship and performance management office and ask the question, what do my customers want, and how happy are my customers with our services today? Once those requirements are prioritized and formulated from the customer relationship and performance management office, the CIO and deputy CIO can look to the service planning and management office and can ask, where are my plans for the requirements that have been formulated by the customer relationship and performance management office? So one office formulates the requirements and works directly with the missions to represent their needs and has an understanding of the general level of happiness and satisfaction the customers have. Then this next office around service planning and management packages the integrated plans that are necessary to meet the needs of those requirements. This is where you see traditional planning functions like enterprise architecture, capital planning, project management. These types of management, planning and management disciplines that sit within this particular office. The collaborative planning methodology from OMB, which is covered in another video, that really is a prime example of a methodology that can be used within a function or within an office like service planning and management. Next, HUD put in the Information Assurance Office. It's required by law that the Information Assurance function, or the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, reports directly into the CIO and the deputy CIO. In many ways, the information assurance function really is split between, or should be split between, the service planning side and the service delivery side. Information assurance is about planning for the security needs of the organization and then executing against those plans in very tactical ways. In the case of the federal sector, information assurance officers and the CISOs themselves need to report into the CIOs and deputy CIOs for legislative purposes. Lastly, HUD has a Service Development and Delivery Office. This is the organization who takes the plans from service planning and management and then implements those plans in the context of the requirements in order to meet the requirements that have been identified by the Customer Relationship and Performance Management Office. The Service Development and Delivery Office breaks down into those three areas, the three main products and services that are being delivered: infrastructure, information delivery, and application development. So in essence, the CIO and deputy CIO have really three main people to engage in terms of a linear flow of the customer's needs in that car type of example. The CIO and deputy CIO go to the customer relationship people to understand what it is that my customers want. They go to the service planning and management office to see the integrated plans for meeting those needs. And they go to the Service Development and Delivery Office to make sure that those plans are being implemented. The Information Assurance Office carries forward with the security posture that's necessary across the spectrum of services here. And then on the left, you see the Resource Management Office that really is in charge of administrative types of functions and HR functions. This is a really interesting example, and other agencies are patterning themselves off of HUD. A CIO and a deputy CIO that have three main people to engage to understand their needs of their customers, plan those needs, and implement what has been planned. The simplicity of that model takes us far away from a heavy historical Klinger-Cohen type of focus on the functions that are being called out in Klinger-Cohen, and gets us really into an efficient posture where there's accountability around the three main activities to bring to bear the three main services that the mission customers expect from their OCIO. Now let's talk just briefly about each of these main offices in a little bit more detail. So here we have the Customer Relationship and Performance Management Office. Now this office really ensures that the IRM meets the needs of the customer base and has auditable and quantifiable performance metrics. This is an associate CIO level type of person. This is a function where we should have these customer relationship coordinators that are part of this office and really assigned into the mission programs. And they really work with their mission counterparts to understand the needs, support the development of some of the plans that those needs are going to have, and then help to ensure that the mission customers have a high level of satisfaction. Again, the customer relationship coordinators are not only isolated into their own box, but support the planning functions in the next office and support the delivery functions in the delivery office. They're the common thread that makes sure that the customer needs are ultimately met. Next, we have the Service Planning and Management Office. The focus here is to make sure that the planning, investment, and all the implementation program planning that needs to get done is done so that the implementation can go forward. Again, this is an associate CIO level person who's leading this organization. They really have coverage of the architect and the invest and some of the planning services around the implementation side of our flow of activities here. The customer relationship coordinators from the first office really engage with the enterprise architects and the information planners and the other types of planners in this planning office in order to make sure that the customer's needs are adequately represented into the plans themselves. The customer relationship coordinators engage with CPIC and acquisition people to make sure that what's invested and purchased is in fact appropriate for what the customer's needs are. And then the customer relationship people really engage the project managers in this office to ensure that the mission investments are being implemented as planned. There's a debate as to whether the project managers sit most appropriately in the planning office or in the delivery office. At HUD, they were put into the planning office to give a natural tension between the planning office and the delivery office so that there's a check and balance between those two groups where the managers are in one and the delivery agents are in the other. Next, we have the Information Assurance Office. The Information Assurance Office works with the customer relationship coordinators to really support the planning and satisfaction of information assurance requirements. They need to understand what type of solutions are being brought to bear, what type of services are being brought to bear, and they need to be able to put that into a secure context and explain the security requirements and posture that's needed so that the mission organizations are comfortable with the way that their information is being handled. Again, at HUD, this is an associate CIO level person responsible for security and privacy policies, overall compliance with these policies, monitoring and timely response and remediation of breaches and violations, and really educating the user community on information assurance. And lastly, we have this Service Development and Delivery Office, which is responsible for the overall delivery of IRM services. The actual delivery itself. Now we've talked about these three services. We've got the infrastructure side, the solution side, and the information delivery side. These are the services that need to be delivered per the plans from the planning office and per the requirements from the customer relationship and performance management function. Again, this is an associate CIO level function and responsible for each of these three core IRM services. This office also is responsible for coordinating mission-specific solution and help desk types of services. So this is where we have help desk types of activities are happening on an ongoing basis. And this is also where the solution feedback from the implementation side itself and even from the use of some of the solutions themselves can find its way back into the customer relationship functions, find its way back into the planning functions as well. And lastly, we've got the Resource Management Division at HUD. This is the organization that's responsible for the delivery of human capital and other resource management types of services. They manage customer-facing administrative functions. They manage resource management. They deal with internal communications and official reporting and OCIO correspondences. Some of the financial and budget aspects of the organization are dealt with here as well. This is nice to have as a group that directly reports into the Deputy CIO and the CIO and handles the management and operations aspects of running a program or an office. So how do we shift into an organization or shift our organization into a modern model? At HUD, we put ourselves into a situation of going through a methodical approach to being able to do this type of reorganization. We really recommended a methodical approach because this is something that's going to take a lot of time, and as long as you're on a path that makes sense and is compact and efficient, then your time will be served, will be used in a wise manner. We really looked at this in a 5-step approach. First, it was important for the organization to take a step back and really kind of try to figure out why is it that we exist as an OCIO, and how should we be organized. The OCIO structure at HUD was really focused, and on many organizations, is really generally focused on a variety of different activities. It's easy to focus on the compliance aspects and the data calls and the adherence to different types of policies as being the core focus. But in reality, these federal OCIOs are really focused on and really exist to deliver those 3 services that we discussed: infrastructure, solutions, and information delivery. Resetting the expectations of the organization to understand that that's the core focus is a critical first component to a reorganization. Then working through how the organization should be organized itself structurally is the second part of this first activity. Then the second activity is what will we bring to market and how? So how are we going to articulate our catalog of services that reside within those 3 major buckets of infrastructure, solutions, and information delivery? How are we going to articulate our catalog of services, and how are we going to market them, and to whom? Who are our customers as the OCIO? Who are the people in the missions that we should engage with? How do we assign our customer relationship people into those types of mission individuals? How are we going to market our services so that they're well understood and that the costs around these services is also well understood? Then we move into step 3. Does everyone know their role? This is where we train the staff within the OCIO on how they fit into the customer-focused model and their individual performance measures of how they're going to be held accountable. Do the architects now understand that they're part of an integrated planning function and receive requirements from the customer relationship office? Does the delivery office understand that their requirements and priorities are driven off of a customer relationship office? So in step 3, we work them through a series of use cases of model situations that they can expect to encounter while they're running their newly transformed OCIO. So I'm a mission customer and I need a new application. Or I have an existing application and I need to make changes to it. Or I've got a data center and I'm spending way too much money and I want to get out of the data center business. I want to bring that into the OCIO because it's been a rogue data center. These are types of scenarios that we work through in step 3 so that everyone understands how they would operate in their roles within their offices as part of the new structure. Then step 4 is when we go to market. This is when we've got a trained organization from step 3, we've put a new organization into place, we have our catalog of services and prices, and we understand what it is that who we want to market to. This is all accomplished in steps 1 through 3. In step 4, we go to market. We offer these services actively through our go-to-market plan. We obtain the customers, and we deliver these services. And in step 5 is where we're measuring. What's the customer satisfaction within this new model? What are the organizational benefits? What does the overall staff performance look like? Quickly, we're going to go through these 5 steps in a little bit more detail. So why do we exist and how should we be organized? This is where we're trying to figure out the strategic intent of the organization and really determining the types of services that should be offered. From there, we break down into the organizational construct. Now, it should be said that The services that are generally offered are those three services that we've talked about. But it's good to be able to go through this to make sure that everyone's bought in. The organizational structure itself should very well mirror what was done at HUD. But defining that out and the individual needs of that organization and how that influences the organizational chart itself, it should be done in this step. This is when we create those model use cases and that would be used within the organization. This is where we define personnel and some of the roles and responsibilities. This is where we even begin assigning some of the staff into those roles. So you see we deliver a strategic plan, a service catalog, an org chart, some example scenarios, and maybe even a staff assignment chart as part of step one. It's a big step. And step two is where we're really determining the specifics of how these services are going to be offered. We're thinking about who those customers are. We're thinking about how those reimbursable relationships will work in order to have funding from one organization pay the OCIO. We're really determining the different customers and how they map to the services that we want to offer. And we're formulating that marketing and outreach plan. This is where we're getting down into the service offering methodologies themselves. If we want to offer this service, what's our methodology behind that service? Then we can prove that we've got a sound approach to delivering that service to the customer. This is where we're looking at MOU templates to make sure that they understand how one organization can buy from another. This is where we're looking at a customer pipeline. Who are the people that we want to offer services to? And this is when we're also looking at a tactical marketing plan. When we're ready to go to market, how are we going to do it? And step three is when we're making sure that everyone knows what they're supposed to do. This is when we train the staff on the new organization structure and its intent. We train the staff on the service catalog. We train individual leads on the role of their organizations. We train individual staff on their role within the larger context of service delivery. And we determine missing job skills for key individuals, the leads of the organization that might be very well suited for most of their jobs, but what are the missing skills that are there? And we train key individuals on those missing job skills in step three as well. So the deliverables look like a training plan and materials, a skills assessment, and maybe even some outside training recommendations for some of the key individuals. And step four is when we're going to market. We're assigning those outreach people to directly engage with those priority customers. We're executing against that outreach plan that we've previously created. We're obtaining agreements with our new customers for what it is that we're going to do for them and for how much. And we're providing services to those customers. This is where we get into our marketing materials or our customer agreement, and this is when we're actually delivering the services, new solutions, new information delivery, new infrastructure. And lastly, in step five is when we're really concentrating on, are we doing a good job? This is where we're defining performance metrics for the organization and the roles. Is my organization doing what it needs to do in the larger context of service delivery? Is this person doing a good job as a leader? Then I'm defining performance measures for those roles and understanding where this performance measurement data is going to come from. In some instances, the performance measurement data may come from systems that exist or from data calls or customer relationship calls themselves. In other instances, it may be more subjective type of feedback. Then we want to formulate individual team and office-specific scorecards so that it's all documented and made publicly available, or maybe even just available within that organization. And then we want to report, based on the scorecard, we want to report the actuals of how the performance is being accomplished within this organization. Our deliverables here look like performance measures, data sources for those performance data, and dashboards themselves. Measurement against the plan of the customer relationship function and the customer's happiness and the planning that needs to get done, and then the implementation that needs to get done. That life cycle needs to be appropriately measured and reported. Information resource management is critical to the lifeblood of the set of missions that the federal government provides. There are many, many missions that are out there that are drastically underserved by IT. IT being introduced into many of these manual processes would do a world of wonder for being able to more effectively and efficiently deliver these missions to the citizens. In order to meet the needs of people that are currently using IT within the missions, or meet the needs of mission customers that don't yet fully leverage IT to benefit their missions. In order to do that, we need to be ready to receive and appreciate and embrace those mission customers, as the customers that they are. Remember, industry is ready to sell direct commodity services and solutions directly to these mission customers. The OCIOs need to be positioned to be competitive. We don't want the OCIOs to become seemingly obsolete because the needs of the mission customers are being met solely by industry in a direct sale transaction. The OCIOs themselves need to compete in order to keep their customers. That means that they need to be positioned and ready to understand the customer's needs, engage with them with an effective customer relationship staff, plan for those needs in an efficient way, and really implement those plans so that the customers can be satisfied with the overall use of information and resource management within their organizations. Performance measurement and customer satisfaction measurement are critical to understanding whether or not the OCIO is truly meeting the needs of those mission customers.